Ever since the emergence of the Jedi Order, lightsaber techniques have been a staple part. There were several forms of fighting that one could master, such as the more defensive fighting techniques that Jedi such as Obi-Wan Kenobi preferred, and the more aggressive forms that Jedi such as Plo Koon preferred. In this video, we will be going through the several forms of lightsaber techniques that someone could master, as well as the notable users that were able to master their preferred forms or form. Keep in mind that this is Legends and Jedi were able to master more than one fighting technique, some even mastering all 7. Form 1. Form 1 was also known as Shi-Cho. Shi-Cho was an ancient fighting style that was used in a time period where lightsabers were wielded and fought with in a similar manner to swords. As the Jedi Order developed, Shi-Cho became more and more irrelevant due to it being simplistic and raw. As a result of this, Shi-Cho turned into a form that Jedi younglings first learned. It became irrelevant not only because of its simplicity, but when the Sith Order came about, Shi-Cho was rendered relatively useless. Shi-Cho was known to be an effective fighting tool against groups of enemies, but when it came to duels it was very slow and predictable, meaning that enemies could get the upper hand because of the lack of mobility. In saying this, the Jedi who were able to overcome these barriers by using Form 1 in a combination with other more agile forms of combat had the potential to become very powerful and skilled in this now rare fighting form. Notable users of Shi-Cho include Kit Fisto and Yoda. Form 2. Form 2, known as Makashi, was one of the most dual-focused of all the several forms of fighting styles. It was developed during a time where engagements between Sith and Jedi was routine activity. Makashi was developed to counter the early fighting styles of Shi-Cho. It relied on timing and accuracy rather than strength. Form 2 users were known to be very cocky in their movements and often looked like they were dancing. Most Makashi users used curved lightsaber hilts, allowing for better blade control, and it helped greatly with precision. This method was used primarily by the Sith Order, such as Count Dooku and Jarek. However, Jedi such as Shaak Ti were able to master Makashi as well. Form 3. Form 3 or Sorso was one of the most defensive forms of lightsaber combat that had the potential to be mastered. This technique relied on subtle dodges and short sweeps designed to provide maximum defensive coverage, whilst in one-on-one combat. Sorso was the least tiring of all 7 forms, as it utilized motions that were very close to the body, allowing for full defensive coverage and used next to no energy. Sorso was one of the hardest forms to truly master, as many Padawans struggled to master the counterattack aspect, which was the only way a Jedi who used Sorso could defeat his opponent. Once a Jedi was able to master this form, they were a formidable foe. Masters of Sorso included Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Bane. Form 4. Ataru or Form 4 was a very aggressive combat form that relied largely on the Force. The form used wide, fast and powerful swings which constantly called on the aid of the Force because of how consuming these attacks were. In addition to this, many older Jedi used this technique as it helped them overcome physical limitation shown in the case of Master Yoda, who with Ataru could perform amazing feats of acrobatics, including somersaults and backflips, making him very nimble. Form 4 utilized the Force to grant individuals athletic abilities, therefore giving them very powerful lightsaber swings, as well as having the choice to use this Force energy to make the user more nimble. Notable Jedi who mastered this form were Yoda, Shaak Ti, and Ahsoka Tano. Form 5. Form 5 was a form that was created by users of the defensive Form 3. Form 5 had 2 stages, the first being Shien, or the Perseverance form, and the second being called the Yem-So. Masters of Sorso, the defensive fighting style, desired a more offensive style of defense, and thus created this combat form. They believed that Form 3 could become very dangerous if the user was not trained properly. The first stage of Form 5, Shien, enabled the user not only to protect themselves against blaster fire, but also train the user in how to launch powerful counterattacks after deflecting or dodging blaster fire. Although Shien was good against groups of enemies, similar to Form 1, it was subpar for single and more powerful targets. Yem-So was the second stage of Form 5 that was created to counter the glaring weakness the first stage, Shien, had. Yem-So solely focused on lightsaber dueling. It used many elements taught in Form 3, such as primarily using defense while fighting. Notable differences this form had compared to Sorsu was that practitioners of Yem-So were taught more powerful counterattacks compared to Sorsu, which solely focused on thoroughly defensive strategies of fighting. Powerful users of Form 5 included Anakin Skywalker and Aayla Secura. Form 6. Form 6 or Nieman was a fighting style that attempted to blend all elements of lightsaber combat together into a less intense and more balanced combat style. Due to this style being a jack-of-all-trades type of fighting style, the success in combat using this technique was largely based on the individual's improvisation and creativity, rather than the rote responses the other forms garnered whilst locked in combat. Nieman was a more calm and creative aspect of combat that one could train himself in. Notable Jedi and Sith who practiced this form were Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Maul. Form 7. Form 7, like Form 5, had two separate forms that could be mastered, both being tremendously powerful and extremely tough to pull off. The first form to be mastered was known as Geo, also known as the Ferocity form. Geo was known to be one of the most vicious fighting forces of its time. So vicious that at one point Geo became restricted in the Jedi Order, due to fears that excessive use would turn practitioners toward the dark side. Sith such as Darth Maul and Galen Marek thoroughly enjoyed using this style of fighting. In the later days of the Old Republic, a new variation of Form 7 called Vapad was created by Jedi Masters Mace Windu and Sora Bulk. Vapad was explained as not only being just a furious form of fighting, but in addition, a transcended state of mind that allowed the user to channel out his own inner darkness throughout the duel. A quote from Yoda reads, "6 there were for generations of Jedi, the 7th is not well known. Powerful form it is, deadliest of all, but dangerous it is, for its master as well as its opponent. Few have studied, one student alone, to mastery has risen." This shows the tremendous amount of power Form 7 has. Yoda states that not only is it very dangerous for the opponent, but if not handled correctly by the master, it can even become dangerous for them. Notable users of Vapad were obviously Mace Windu and Sora Bulk. Fun fact of the day. Sora Bulk, the co-creator of Vapad, was one of the only individuals able to master all several forms of combat styles, making him one of the greatest lightsaber duelists of all time. Thanks for watching guys, I hope you learned something.